All right, guys. We have shoulders and arms today. I love this day, as you guys do too. I think. I don't know. I'm just assuming. I'm assuming everyone loves shoulders and arms, or at least arms, if you're a male. Yeah. Anyways, all right. We're starting here with the Viking Press, machine Viking Press. I know your gym may not have one. If you don't have one, it's completely fine. I actually didn't even plan on doing this machine today. I originally wanted to do Smith machine shoulder press like we did in the last video, but the Smith machines were taken. Then I was kind of looking around, okay, what else could I do? And I saw this and I was like, you know what? I haven't done a standing Viking press in a very long time. So for today, we're going to do it. The great thing is because I already did chest and back yesterday for my session, my shoulders, or at least my front delts, are pretty toast already because I did a lot of incline pressing. An incline is obviously going to work that upper pec, but also you're going to be hitting a lot of your front delts as well. So because of that, I don't need to go as heavy. So this is where I'd actually recommend you could get away with doing some form of like a standing overhead press. Normally, I would suggest if your goal is hypertrophy, it's not the best exercise to select if that's your main goal, because the biggest thing and the biggest limiting factor is going to be your stability or lack thereof. You're not going to have as much stability when you're standing upright because you're going to have to use a lot more muscles in your body to keep yourself stable. Whereas if you do something like seated shoulder press or seated military press or overhead press, they're all the same thing. You're going to have a lot more stability because you're seated. So that being said, we don't need to go as heavy today, which is awesome for that main reason. Now, I'm going to do one more warm-up set just to kind of make sure that everything's set up accordingly. And again, you guys don't have this. You don't have to do it. Do any shoulder press in replace for this. It's completely fine. Now, we're only doing 2 working sets here. Right to failure. So I think for the sake of these 2 working sets, I'm just going to jump straight into 2 plates on each side. Now my rep range, as you guys know, is going to be, getting ahead of myself, is going to be anywhere from 8 to 12 reps. So I want to fail somewhere between that 8 and 12 rep range. This might even be kind of I can't talk. Levy, dude, I don't even know what I'm saying. That was light and heavy combined. This might be kind of light. I'm not sure, or it could be heavy. I think we'll do 1 set here and then I'll probably increase the weight. Now, normally, like I was mentioning earlier, I was probably going to do the Smith machine overhead shoulder press. And the reason being is because I like to have some sort of standardization in my workouts where I'm keeping sort of the main lifts relatively the same. I can change up the accessory movements. I can change up the isolation exercises for the most part. But when it comes to compound movements, I like to keep those pretty set in stone, and I'll run those like indefinitely. I mean, we can get deep into this later on in the workout because I know it's the beginning and you guys are probably like, dude, just get on with it. But if you look at any of the bodybuilders, particularly in the 90s, they just did the same movements over and over and over again. And most bodybuilders do. And the reason that is because you're much more likely to progress at those movements by keeping them in your training block for a long time or almost indefinitely. You actually don't have to switch things up. There's no such thing as, oh, you got to confuse the body. That doesn't make any sense. In terms of the literature, it doesn't actually matter. And if anything, you're doing yourself less of a service in terms of hypertrophy or muscle growth if you're constantly changing things up, because you're not really ever going to be able to progress at those specific movements. And you're also not going to be able to measure your progress down the road. So you won't actually know if you truly are progressing in the actual lifts. So if you keep things standardized and you keep things basic and the same, you're going to be able to progress a lot easier, and you're going to be able to measure your success or your failure based off of that same movement week to week, month to month, and year to year. So normally I like to keep things, you know, the same, at least for the first couple lifts or the first couple exercises in my workout. And then we can kind of have fun and change things up. But for the sake of today's video, because it was taken, you know, I don't feel like waiting around. We're going to have fun with this, see where we're at on this movement. I used to be able to do, I think, 4 plates. That could be a little fib. I don't know, maybe 3. We'll see. Few little partials at the end there. I did get to 12. I think we're going to throw in a quarter for this next set. I might even do a 3rd set. We'll play it by ear. But this movement actually felt really good. And usually when things feel good and I feel good, just keep doing it. Keep doing add another set. You don't have to always, just like you don't have to keep everything set in stone in terms of, your workouts. You can kind of be free and change things up here and there. You can also, add in an extra set. If you said you wanted to do 2 sets, maybe do 3. That's still progressing. That's still actually progressive overload too, for those of you that did not know. Progressive overload could be, not just in terms of increasing load or weight and progressing in that avenue, but you can also progress through sets and through reps. So at a specific weight, if you try to push for extra reps that you're not used to, that's still progressively overloading the muscle. And then same thing with the sets. Adding on an extra set at that particular weight is still progressive overload. So many ways you can skin a cat. What? Okay. One measly partial rep there. That felt good. We are going to do a 3rd set. I actually like this exercise. It feels good. And when I say it feels good, I just mean, after one working set, I feel a pump. Like I feel the muscle start to swell, which, I've talked on this in the past. A muscle pump does not always correlate or lead to muscle growth or hypertrophy, but it's a great indicator of one, stimulus, letting you know that you are in fact targeting the target muscle that you're intended on training. And then also, it feels great and you look good. I mean, again, who doesn't love a pump? Okay, I think we're gonna throw a 10 on. Now for my form, this is exactly the same as all my shoulder presses. So to quickly run through it, when you're doing a standing overhead press, even if you're doing free weight, obviously the bar path is going to be slightly different because this is on a fixed pivot point. So as I press up, the handles get actually further in front of me or further away from me in front of me, if that made sense. Whereas when you're doing an overhead press, you're just going essentially trying to go just straight up and down. Now you are going to have to move around your head a bit, but usually you want to move your head around the bar as you're pressing, not the bar around your head. So you're not kind of doing this weird jerky motion when you're using free weight. When we're using this machine, obviously I guess this would be more like dumbbells because you can, isolaterally train each arm. But for the sake of this machine, as we press, the handles do get slightly in front of me. So I'm just really trying to keep myself as stable and locked in position as possible through the entire duration of the movement. So I'm coming in close. I want to stand almost directly underneath these handles. I still want my elbows to be slightly tucked in front. Okay, I'm stacking these two joints. Reason being is because I don't want to start like this. This is already putting a lot of pressure on my shoulder joint. So I want to keep my elbow essentially just tucked underneath the handle and then actually just moving in the direction of those handles. So as those handles move in front of me slightly, I want to kind of shift my body weight to maintain this stable position the entire time, because if I don't, as you press up and your hands get away from you, because these handles get in front of you, you actually start to feel your body move back like this. So you want to create a stable environment when you're pressing or using this machine. Now, when it comes to foot positioning, I was doing just regular, just slightly wider than shoulder width stance with feet together. However, you're more than welcome to do a split stance. The only reason I'm not using a split stance on this, well, a few reasons. One, call it OCD, but I like to switch it up each set, right? Nothing wrong with that. But two, it is going to shift one of my hips offset a little bit, so it might keep myself a little more leaning to one direction. It could, it may not, but just to kind of mitigate that, I like to hold, or have rather, a slightly wider shoulder width foot positioning or foot stance. But you can run into the issue of not having as much stability and feeling yourself kind of move back if you don't have a strong core to keep yourself stable. Again, we're not going crazy heavy on this, so I'm not too concerned about it. I'm still pushing to failure for that 8 to 12 rep range, somewhere within that window. But again, that's the form for the setup. And then now for the actual execution of each rep, I want you focused on driving, instead of just thinking about pushing these handles away from you, because if you just think about pushing away, again, like I said, you're going to do everything you can to get those handles as far away from you as possible. And that's when you start leaning back, because you're just thinking about creating some arbitrary distance from your hands to your actual shoulders or to your torso. So instead of just thinking of a direction of pushing, I want you actually thinking a direction of your biceps or this upper part of your arm, like I teach on all my pressing movements, is I want you thinking about driving those biceps or this upper part of your arm in towards your ears, okay? So you're thinking about just literally gripping those handles and then driving biceps into ears, squeezing that front out. That's it. Plain and simple. And then lastly, of course, control that eccentric and control every rep. You can use a little bit of momentum, obviously, as you get heavier. I'm not against momentum, as long as it's controlled, though. Okay. Third and final set. That's it. Now, if you noticed, as I'm pressing and as I get further up in the movement, I am leaning into that movement. So again, I'm really trying to fight my torso from moving back. So if anything, I'm actually just leaning into the movement a bit more. Again, that's just going to kind of keep my center of mass directly underneath the line of force for these handles. So I'm out of breath, but that's it. We're going to move on. We got some lateral raises. I think we're going to do dumbbells, and then we're going to get into the fun stuff, which is going to be biceps, triceps, and maybe a bit of abs. At the end, I'll teach you some abs. Okay, so we just did one warm up. We're gonna grab the weights and bring them over there so we're not in anybody's way, because gym etiquette is a thing. So I think I want to start with 40s and just kind of get right into it. Kind of want to go a bit heavier. I say that, I'll probably just stay at the same weight I've been doing, but it's still heavy for me. Anything around 40 and obviously north of 40 pounds is heavy. So I think I want to aim for about 8 reps. That's kind of my target today. Not really caring about pushing to 12. If I get 12 with heavier weight, cool. But 8 is the threshold because I want to try to get up, you know, push the weight a bit, maybe get to 50s, maybe 55s. Okay, not quite to failure, but that was getting close. We're gonna go up. So we're gonna do a total of 4 working sets here. I may not film every single set, but to you guys watching, just know that I'm doing 4. So I'm doing 4 working sets, ideally hitting failure around that 8, maybe 10 rep mark. Now, also including partials, as you're gonna see on this set. I'm just gonna kind of keep going until I can't. Lastly, I will explain the form now. For the form, again, I want you guys to remember that you wanna lean forward a bit. So you're not gonna be leaning all the way forward, but I want you leaning just slightly over top of your hips. So you're not upright like this, just lean slightly forward. Now, as you initiate every rep, I want you thinking about, instead of thinking up, because if you think up, you're more likely gonna shrug. So instead of thinking up, I want you to think about pushing those weights out and away from you. So you're almost reaching out and touching the corners of the walls in front of you, or just touching the walls in front of you or beside you. However you can think or visualize to allow you to kind of get your hands out and away from you. That's gonna help you eliminate, not really eliminate, but reduce some of the trap recruitment that you're normally gonna have. You're never gonna eliminate traps completely because this movement is still gonna be a trap sort of oriented movement. And all I mean by that is the traps help assist in what's called scapular upward rotation, meaning, in short, my scapulars are just rotating upward like this as I abduct my arms away from my body. So you're never gonna eliminate the traps, but you can kind of reduce some of the tension if you feel too much. It's usually because people are shrugging the weight as opposed to raising out and away. So that's what I want you guys thinking about. And then again, always control, control, control. Even if you're going heavy, I still want you to control every rep and every single eccentric as much as you can, or as best as you can. You're fighting it on the way down. Even if it's kind of fast because you're tired and the weight's heavy, I still want you fighting that. That's pretty much it. All right. Let's do this. Now, this is heavy for me. I think I did this once in a video, but we'll see how we do. Oh. 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 Oh, that's heavy. Hopefully that wasn't too ugly, but that is heavy. And I'm intentionally going heavy, even though my form might suffer a little bit. I'm intentionally doing that because I want to try to just increase my strength on this movement. My shoulder, my right shoulder, as you guys know, I complain about a lot, but it's been feeling a lot better lately. So I kind of want to capitalize on this moment, try to, obviously still control it, make sure I'm not tweaking anything. But yeah, that was good. We got 2 more sets there. I'm probably just gonna fast track through the video. You'll just see clips of each set. And then we're gonna move on to some arms. And then, depending on the time, a bit of abs, lack thereof, because that's something that genetically was not blessed for me. So, all right, I'm gonna shut up. We're gonna get to it. Ooh. Ooh. Come on. Like melting it. Make it slow-mo. Oh my God. Fatiguing. That's it. Oh, that's it. All right, guys. We're gonna move on to some triceps. No, I think we'll do biceps first. We're gonna use the machine over there, preacher curl to start. Heavy. Come on. So we're gonna start with this preacher just to kind of kick off biceps. I'm gonna intentionally, the great thing about this machine is it's got this adjustable cam on the side here, so I can adjust the resistance profile in terms of which part of the range of motion that I want to load the most, or make the heaviest rather, or the most challenging. So I set it to 3 because 3 allows me to have it heaviest in the lengthened or beginning range, basically down at the bottom here. It's going to be really heavy, and then as I come up, it's going to get lighter. This is essentially, well, not essentially, this is 100% matching doing just a free weight, because free weight is going to be the same resistance profile. It's going to be heaviest here and then lighter at the top. Now, for those of you that are like, why don't you just do free weight? I can. I don't want to. I want to use this. It's convenient, and it's got the selectorized weight stack, so I can just, you know, quickly adjust weight. It's just more convenient that way. But for those of you watching, if you don't have one of these machines, just do free weight. Single arm, double arm, dumbbell, barbell, doesn't matter. The key though is to work in a full range of motion. I want to work all the way in this stretched position. I don't want to stop, let's say right here. So I want to come all the way down through the entire duration of the exercise and the set. Okay. First set's just a warm up. This is going to be the first working set. Bring the seat down a bit. I want my arms, my elbows to be lined up with this axis of rotation. I don't want to be too high up here. And obviously I don't want my, not that your elbows would be hanging off, but you don't want to be leaning over like this and having them hang off. You want to keep your joint matched up with the pivot point of the actual machine, ideally. And then in terms of grip width, I just want you pointing your biceps straight, right? Your elbow's a hinge joint, so you want to work in the direction of the actual machine. So I'm keeping my biceps pointed straight in front of me. And then as I curl up, this is naturally where my hands want to be. They don't want to be in here like this. So I'm not going to hold a narrow grip. I want to hold somewhere around my shoulder width, maybe a little wider. So I'm just going to come down and look at that. I'm holding right here. That's going to be a comfortable hand width for my elbow, but also for the actual movement, and allow me to load the bicep a little more efficiently. Foot form. Once you get the setup right, I want you guys just thinking about pulling forearms into your biceps. That's it. I don't want you thinking about lifting the handles up, similar to the lateral raises. If you're just thinking in a direction, you're going to start recruiting other parts of your body to help kind of move in that direction. Because our bodies like to find the path of least resistance when we're training, particularly resistance training, our bodies do like to automatically cheat and find the easiest, most efficient way to lift some heavy weight. And an efficient way to do that is use more muscles. We want to try to minimize that to an extent by keeping our shoulders locked and stable the entire time, and we're not thinking necessarily direction of the actual handles. So I'm not just thinking about lifting those handles up, because again, if I think up, I'm more likely going to be recruiting shoulders, rocking back, or even moving my torso back to help assist in the execution of each rep. So instead, I'm literally just thinking about pulling, almost like a drawbridge. I'm bringing forearms to biceps and just squeezing as hard as I can, okay? Next, for every single rep, because I'm thinking about forearms to biceps, I'm actually not just thinking about up, like I mentioned, I'm actually thinking about down. So if anything, I'm pulling my tricep, or pressing it rather, into this pad below my arm. This is going to help keep everything locked and stable the entire time. I want to keep my tricep flat against this pad the entire time. I don't want my elbows lifting off like this. Okay, so I'm driving, almost using my lats to pull into this pad, keeping myself stable through the movement, and I'm just thinking about pulling forearms to biceps. That's it. Next set. Holy shit. So rep range, we're just aiming for, I don't know what we got, like 6 to 8. Holy shit. That's good. Ideally, just go to failure. Now, some of you have concerns about particularly preacher curls in general, mainly free weight, but I'm sure some of you worry about tearing a bicep on preacher curls because you've seen those horror videos of people literally tearing their bicep. That happens when you're going heavy, using a weight that you're not used to, you've never even, attempted before, or you have done it before, but you're working in a range that you're not used to. Okay, so what I mean by that is you're going overly heavy and you fall out of the range that you're strong in, that you've been training in, which most people are strong in that mid-range. So what happens is you see these guys load up the weight and they literally work from here to here. And they're just in this range. But then when they start to fatigue or fail, or they're rushing the movement, they go out of this range and they fall into this range, which they're just not used to. Their joints aren't used to, their ligaments and tendons aren't used to. Tendons especially are definitely not used to that range, and the muscle as well. And the next thing you know, you get a pop and they tear their bicep. So that's not necessarily going to happen if you cover these main points, which is one, always work in a deep enough range. Don't ego lift, control every rep. And then lastly is, well, I guess those would be the two main ones. And then lastly, yeah, to kind of summarize is, don't ego lift, don't lift weight that you're not used to and just jerk it around. Really control that eccentric, lower into a deep range, sit there for a second, half second at the very least, couple seconds though, and then focus on coming up into that full contraction. You're not going to tear anything if you train smart, and if you train, in a much more slow and patient manner in terms of progressively overloading. You don't have to feel like you have to rush, be like, oh, fuck it, I'm just going to lift the whole gym today. So you'll be fine. Just be smart. We got our last set now. We're going to stay at this weight because I am failing around, I think, 8. Okay, we're gonna move on to some dips right here. Actually, I think we'll use this one. It's a quick little warm-up set. We're gonna go heavier. I'm picking this movement because I'm still gonna be targeting a bit of my shoulders in this movement. This is still gonna be kind of a compoundy lift. So you're kind of still killing two birds with one stone here because we're training shoulders and arms. It's a great compound movement, and I'm starting with it for triceps, again, because it's a compound movement. I'm gonna have more strength for this actual movement, so I'm able to go heavier because I'm saving it towards the beginning of my tricep training. Set number 2, I think we're gonna do maybe 4 working sets here. Now, in terms of my form, what I'm thinking about is a few things. So one is I want to, again, I know I said this is going to be working my shoulders, and it is because in this position, my front delt's going to be really stretched, and it's going to be assisting in some of that, pressing motion. But also, what I want to think about mainly, though, is keeping those shoulders, or my shoulders, sorry, locked and stable in position the entire time. I don't want to be elevating and depressing through the movement, or try to minimize that as much as possible. Now, the reason is because I want to place most of that tension on my tricep. The minute I start elevating and then depressing, I'm going to be recruiting, obviously, more of those shoulders, but also some of my pecs as well to assist in the movement, which is not really what I want to do for the specific movement. Again, I'm trying to isolate the triceps as much as possible. So I'm keeping shoulders almost shrugged a bit to keep them locked in this position. The only reason I'm keeping them shrugged is because it doesn't take much effort, because the force is actually pushing my shoulders up anyways. So if I try to keep my shoulders depressed and down the entire time, I'm going to be utilizing, again, more of those pecs or some of these muscles that help depress the scapulas and depress the shoulders. I'll be utilizing those the whole time, and it kind of takes away from the movement. I'll be focused too much on keeping my shoulders down as opposed to targeting my triceps. So again, I'm shrugging up intentionally and then just keeping my shoulders in this position through the duration of the movement. Next, and lastly, in terms of executing every rep, I'm thinking, again, I'm not just thinking down, because again, like I said, if I'm thinking down, I'm depressing. So if I'm thinking of a direction, I'm actually thinking more so of pulling elbows in towards me, okay? And then elbows come out away from me. So as I press and extend my tricep, I'm thinking about pulling elbows in, squeezing tricep, and then pushing elbows away, stretching tricep. That's pretty much it. Hand width or position, totally individualized. I like to keep it somewhere on this bent part here. That's just most comfortable for me. Oh, thick. Okay, 2 more sets. So hopefully you guys can kind of see what I meant there by keeping shoulders somewhat shrugged and just focused on extending that tricep. I know I stress about this a lot, and I saw a post, actually, a guy on Instagram that I follow, I forget his name, or the account's name, but he was talking about, momentum, and how a lot of trainers now are saying like, oh, stop using momentum. Look, I'm a culprit for that. I used to and still believe in minimizing as much momentum as possible. However, he brought up a really good point, because when you look at a lot of these old school bodybuilders, especially Arnold is a great example. When you watch his training videos from back in the 70s, he uses a crap ton of momentum in his training. Now, that actually doesn't mean it's bad, and it doesn't mean it's wrong. Is it on the cusp of cheat reps? 100%, yeah. But if it's controlled momentum, in which case Arnold definitely was controlling his momentum when he was training, it's actually not that big of a deal because he's almost intuitively training to target and load more of that lengthened range in a lot of his movements that he picks, right? So for instance, in the actual example of the video, it showed him doing lat pull downs, and you could see him jerk that weight up, but catch it at the top here where virtually there's minimal, if not very little resistance on your lats in this position. Now, he's not really controlling the eccentric, but he slows it down drastically when he gets to here, almost catching it on his lat, not going all the way up. You can see his lats, you know, stretch out. And you can actually argue he's utilizing that momentum to load the lengthened range. So it actually is pretty smart, because he's intuitively, he can feel like, oh, if I don't control and I don't go slow and I actually let the weight, you know, go quickly up, but then I catch it here, I'm creating a lot more force to have to stop that weight in my lats. So essentially you're actually, it's kind of smart. You're flipping the resistance profile a little bit of the actual movement, making it heavier in this lengthened range. So you can actually use momentum, but I strongly advocate to minimize it as much as possible, especially if you're a beginner or even just an intermediate and you haven't been doing this for very long. It is an advanced technique. You can still run the risk of injury, especially on certain movements. Like we just mentioned with the preacher curls, you can still tear something if you're not careful, but you can definitely use a bit of momentum. You know, I'm not that stingent on it. Like it's not, it's not wrong to use momentum. You see me use momentum in a lot of my movements, but it's controlled and I'm cognizant of that. I'm intentional with it. And I think that's the key. And I say this a lot, but be intentional with everything that you do. Don't just do something because you saw someone do it or because someone told you this is the next best thing. You know, think about it. You can test it out and try it for yourself and see if it works, but understand the mechanism, understand what it is you're actually doing and what it is you're trying to accomplish when doing it. That's my little rant on momentum. But third set here. Oh. Oh. Fourth and final set, guys. Okay, we're gonna move on. Oh, lightheaded. All right. So unfortunately, we're just gonna do one bicep today. So that preacher curl that we did, that's the only bicep we're doing. I did biceps actually yesterday, I forgot to mention. I did a bit of hammer curls anyways. So we did get a bit of volume in for myself, but for you guys, you know, maybe do some dumbbell curls or something to load that mid-range, because you already did, if you did the preacher, like we did, or like I did, sorry, you'll be loading primarily that lengthened range of the bicep. So maybe pick something that allows you to load more mid-range, which is just traditional or conventional dumbbell curl. Now for the triceps, for the sake of time, I'm always in a rush, guys. I'm sorry. I swear I love you and I don't want to rush out of here, but I have to. So we have two things. We did this last shoulders and arms day where I did the table tricep kickback. So we're going to be doing that, and we're going to superset it with a double arm overhead tricep extension just behind me. So back to back, minimal rest. Let's try this. Okay. So if you notice, I intentionally have this pulley set up relatively high for the reason that just happened. Like when I start to fail in this range, it's extremely awkward for me to kind of pull it around. So instead I just, well, still awkwardly, but just lower down and just let it set. If you have it set all the way at the bottom, it's just annoying to get in and out of the machine, or the movement rather, because it's so low. So that's that reason. Now for this, quickly run through it. I have the cable set up in somewhat of this mid-range. So in other words, it's not too high and it's not necessarily in line with my hand. Somewhere in this mid-range. And then I'm intentionally leaning back, keeping my arm extended behind me the entire time. Having it in this range for me at this specific setting allows me to target the actual mid-range of the movement itself. So what I mean by that is when this is at 90 degrees to my wrist, that's the heaviest part of the movement. So right here in this sort of mid-range of this actual exercise, it's going to be heaviest. And then as I extend further, the cable gets closer to my working arm, so the movement does get actually easier. But you can adjust that at any height. Play around with the different heights. Just know that the higher you go, the more of the beginning range you're loading. And then the lower you bring this pulley, the more in line the cable will be with your arm at lockout. So you're basically just mimicking a free weight or a dumbbell tricep kickback. But the main goal is to keep that arm extended behind you the entire time, leaning back, and just focus on driving your forearm away from you, squeezing that tricep. So if you're doing it right, you'll feel it way up in here, almost by your rear delt. Okay. Now for my form for this, I'm keeping my elbows tucked in because I'm using a bar. If I was using the ropes, that'd actually allow my elbows to flare out naturally. But because I'm using a bar, I want to try to line my elbow joint up with the actual movement, or the bar path of the movement. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm trying to, you know, give you guys the info, but also battery and time is of the essence. So keeping elbows in, keeping shoulders locked, extending up, squeezing that tricep, coming down to a full stretch. Including length and partials. Fuck. That was a bit heavy. Okay. We got one more set here, but I'm going to do that in a second. I want to film one thing before I let you guys go, and that's going to be abs. So we're going to quickly do an ab because I am going to do abs today, but I just want to run through the form of the machine crunch because I've had people ask about how to execute certain ab movements. So we're going to go there right now. I think it's open, and yeah, let's do it. Most gyms have this Life Fitness ab crunch. Now this one I actually prefer than something like this one here, where the bottom part moves up as well. I don't really like those ones, mainly because I find I focus too much on my hip flexors pulling in the movement, if that makes sense. Whereas this allows me to keep everything locked down from my hips down. They're not moving, so I'm actually driving my feet into the ground, pushing my hips back. And then I'm focused on getting a stretch in my abs, and then thinking about driving, or bringing rather, my sternum and belly button as close together as possible. So just like when we're doing a bicep curl, we're thinking about bringing forearm to bicep like this. Same concept. I'm literally just thinking about bringing, you know, the lower part of my sternum and my belly button as close together in the movement, just contracting, squeezing those abs, and crunching in, as opposed to moving my hips a lot. So it's a spinal movement. It's not a hip movement. So I'm keeping everything locked down, starting with that stretch. I don't even know what the weight's at. We're at 160. It's absolutely ridiculous. Crunching in. Now, I'm trying to keep my shoulders and elbows in the same spot through the entire duration of the movement. What I mean by that is I'm not pulling down like this with my elbows. I'm literally just keeping them locked and making all the force and the initial part of the rep in my abs. So I'm literally just thinking about pulling that sternum down towards my belly button. I'm not doing anything with my elbows or my arms. I'm literally just letting them stay locked in this position the entire time. Pushing my feet against the ground, pushing my hips into the back of the seat. Picking chest up at the top here to get that stretch, driving sternum and belly button together. Now, I didn't go right to failure. I could have kept going, but for the sake of the video and the time, a lot of people get abs wrong because they do crazy amount of reps. They treat their abs for some reason differently, and I fell victim to this, where I would treat my abs like a totally different muscle. But at the end of the day, it's a muscle in the body like everything else. You want to treat it like every other muscle that you're training. Work in the same rep ranges, 8 to 12, go heavy. You know, you don't have to do 30 to 50 to even 100 reps or crunches to get abs. You can literally just stick to the same rep ranges, 8 to 12, and go right to failure for basic movements. I like to keep things very basic. I love this machine because it allows me to standardize the form and the reps, and I can measure my progress based off of the actual weight that I'm doing and the number of reps that I'm hitting. If I'm just doing, you know, crunches on the ground with body weight, I can't really progress at that unless I just do more crunches. So just a little food for thought. Lastly, I don't think we'll have time today, but I could show you like leg raises and stuff next time. But another thing too, I just want to say, if there's any exercises or machines that you guys have at your gym that you want me to do, just write in the comments, just give me suggestions. I'd be like, hey, can you cover this movement or can you cover this exercise? I'm more than happy to include those in my actual training. Again, these videos are for you guys. I'm here to teach you, but I also enjoy recording these and have fun doing it. So again, feel free to write in the comments, ask me any questions you want. And if you want me to go over any exercises specifically that you have at your gym, just write me a message in the comments and I'm more than happy to do that. But as always, thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far in the video, you guys are the ultimate real ones. And, you know, continue to train hard, be diligent with your training, be intentional. I say that every time. Control every rep, control that eccentric. But as always, take it easy and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you guys.